Imagine this. Jesus shows up at your house, not with a sermon, but with a calculator. He's not checking your prayers, he's checking your receipts, how you spent your money, how you used your time. Would he say, "Well done," or "You fool"? You've saved, you've planned, you've built your barns. But what if God calls you home tonight? That's not just a question, it's a parable. A rich man had a plan, but God had a final say. Before you plan your next move, hear what Jesus says about money, eternity, and purpose. What if Jesus walked into your house today and asked you how you've spent your money? Would you be proud, or would you panic? What if everything you believed about success, money, and prosperity was only half the truth? What if the real secrets, the divine keys to wealth, weren't being taught in your Sunday service? Not because they're unbiblical, but because they're uncomfortable, because they challenge the way we think about money, risk, investment, and eternity. Deep in the red letters of the Bible, Jesus told stories, parables, that most people skim over. But hidden in these parables are principles that flip the modern money mindset upside down. These aren't prosperity gimmicks, they're eternal truths. But long ago, Jesus sat on a dusty hill surrounded by crowds and began to tell stories. Not just ordinary stories, parables, with powerful truths hidden inside. Many of those parables were about something we all think about: money. Why? Because money is more than paper. It's a test of the heart. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. So, what does the Son of God really say about riches, wealth, giving, and greed? In this Bible story, we uncover 6 important parables Jesus told about money and what they reveal about your future, your faith, and your forever. Stay with us. The truth might just change how you see everything. The parable of the rich fool, Luke 12:13-21, the man who had too much. One day, as Jesus was teaching, a man interrupted him and said, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Luke 12:13. But Jesus didn't answer with court advice. Instead, he told a parable that pierced the heart. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Luke 12:15. Then Jesus began a story. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. Luke 12:16. There was a rich man whose land produced a great harvest, far more than he expected. The man thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have nowhere to store all my crops." Then he said, "I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my small barns and build bigger ones. There I'll store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, 'You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.'" Luke 12:19. But then God spoke, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" Luke 12:20. What does the parable of the rich fool teach us? Success without God is still failure. Life is not measured by what we own, but by how we honor God. Wealth is temporary, but the soul is eternal. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich toward God. Luke 12:21. Are you chasing bigger barns or building God's kingdom? The real riches, they're found in what we give, not just what we keep. The Shrewd Manager, a Bible story from Luke 16:1-13. Jesus turned to his disciples and told them a story. There once was a rich man who had a manager to oversee his wealth and property. But one day, the rich man received a report. Someone told him that the manager was wasting his possessions. So the master called the manager and said, "What is this I hear about you? Bring me the final account of your work. You can no longer be my manager." The manager left, worried. He said to himself, "What will I do now that I'm losing my job? I'm not strong enough to dig ditches and I'm too ashamed to beg for help. I need a plan, something that will help me make friends, so that when I'm out of work they'll welcome me into their homes." Then he quickly called in each of his master's debtors, one by one. To the first he asked, "How much do you owe my master?" The man replied, 100 measures of oil." "Quick," the manager said, "take your bill, sit down, and write 50. Then he called in another debtor. "How much do you owe?" The man replied, 100 measures of wheat." "Take your bill and write 80, said the manager. Finally, Jesus said, "Use worldly wealth to make friends for yourselves. Then when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings." You might be wondering, why would Jesus use a dishonest man as an example in a parable? This parable isn't about stealing. It's about strategy. It's not about dishonesty. It's about decisions. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. Luke 16:8. Jesus was teaching a powerful principle. Be wise with what you have now, because it determines what God will trust you with later. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Luke 16:10. Key truths. From this parable, the steward planned ahead. He understood that relationships matter more than riches. He used temporary resources for eternal benefit. The unjust steward reminds us, how we handle money is a test. Will we serve God with our wealth, or will wealth become our God? The parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30. Invest what you're given. Jesus told another story, one about a wealthy master, a long journey, and 3 very different servants. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Matthew 25:14. Each servant received exactly what he could handle. One got 5 talents, another 2, and the last, just 1. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. Matthew 25:15. The master left, and the test began. The servant who received 5 talents went out at once and traded with them. He doubled the money and made 5 more talents. The one with 2 talents did the same and gained 2 more. But the servant who received 1 talent went away, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master returned and called the servants to settle accounts. The one who received 5 talents came forward, saying, "Master, you entrusted me with 5 talents. Look, I have made 5 more." The master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a little. I will put you in charge of much. Enter into the joy of your master." Then the one with 2 talents came and said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more." The master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a little. I will put you in charge of much. Enter into the joy of your master." Then came the servant who had received 1 talent. He said, "Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours." But the master answered, "You wicked and lazy servant, if you knew I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed, then you should have at least put my money in the bank, so I could have received it with interest." Then the master said, "Take the 1 talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has nothing, even what he has will be taken away." Parable of the talents, lessons and meaning. God gives everyone something: money, time, skills, influence. What you do with what you have matters to God. Fear is no excuse for inaction. Faithfulness leads to reward, while laziness leads to loss. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have, will be taken from them. Matthew 25:29. So, what are you doing with what God gave you? Are you multiplying your gifts or hiding them in the ground? In God's kingdom, it's not about how much you have, it's what you do with it that counts. Use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Luke 16:9. Lessons. Money is not just for spending, it's for strategy. God wants his people to be wise, not wasteful. Use your money now to invest in eternity later. No one can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve both God and money. Luke 16:13. So, what are you doing with what God gave you? Are you wasting it or investing it with purpose? The parable of the sower, Matthew 13:1-23. Seeds and soil. A farmer went out to sow his seed. Matthew 13:3. Some seeds fell on the path, and the birds quickly ate them. Some fell on rocky ground, where they sprang up fast, but withered in the sun. Others fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. But some seed fell on good soil and produced a great harvest. Some yielding 100, some 60, some 30 times what was sown. Matthew 13:8. The disciples were confused, so Jesus explained the mystery. The seed is the word of God. Luke 8:11. Types of soil. Explained. The path represents a heart that hears the word but doesn't understand it. The enemy snatches it away. When anyone hears the message and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown. Matthew 13:19. Rocky ground. A heart that's excited at first but gives up when trouble comes. They last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes, they quickly fall away. Matthew 13:21. Thorny soil. A heart filled with worries and wealth that chokes God's word. The worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. Matthew 13:22. Good soil. A heart that hears, understands, and produces fruit. The parable reminds us that the condition of your heart decides what the word will do in your life. Is money choking your growth? Are distractions pulling you from purpose? But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. Matthew 13:23. Which soil are you? Teachings of Jesus about money, various scriptures, the heart behind the wallet. Jesus talked about money more than almost any other topic, not because he wanted to make people rich, but because he wanted to test what truly ruled their hearts. He knew something many forget today. Money isn't just currency, it's a mirror. It reflects what we love, trust, and chase after. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. In a world filled with greed, Jesus said the most shocking things. You cannot serve both God and money. Matthew 6:24. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Acts 20:35. While others teach us to hoard, Jesus teaches us to release. While the world says buy more, Jesus says give more. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Luke 6:38. He wasn't promising a lottery win. He was revealing a kingdom principle. When you trust God more than gold, you'll never run dry. No one who has left home or fields for my sake will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age, and in the age to come, eternal life. Mark 10:29-30. Key lessons. Jesus didn't hate money. He hated how it could trap the soul. True wealth is found in trust, not in things. What we give away often reveals more than what we keep. In the end, God isn't just counting your coins, He's watching your heart. Six parables, 6 powerful lessons, 1 unshakable truth. God is watching how you handle what He placed in your hands. Whether He gave you a little or a lot, what you do with it reveals who you truly serve. If you have not been faithful with worldly wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? Luke 16:11. In every parable, Jesus is not just talking about money. He's talking about faithfulness, about eternity, about your heart. Well done, good and faithful servant. Matthew 25-21. Maybe you don't feel rich, but you've been given something, and God is calling you to sow, to invest, and to trust Him with it. Use your wealth for eternity. Invest in people, not just possessions. Be rich in faith, not just finances. Because when you stand before God, He won't ask how much you had. He'll ask what you did with what you were given. Your money is speaking, but what is it saying about your soul? I'll be sharing 2 more Bible stories for you to check out, just in case you haven't seen them yet. Quickly they move. Joab signals to his men outside the walls. With a heavy groan, the city gates creak open, and then a war horn sounds. The Israelites charge. Chaos explodes into the city. The once silent night is now filled with the clash of steel, the cries of warriors, the thunderous echo of charging feet. David himself leads the assault, his sword raised high.
For Yahweh, for Israel, Jerusalem is ours.
Look at them, sheep herders and farmers thinking they can take our city? Fools.
A rough burst of laughter erupts from the Jebusite warriors, their arrogance palpable.
Even the blind and the lame could defend this city.
Jebusite commander, smirking, turning to his men.
Tell their so-called king.
A soldier cups his hands and shouts down into the valley.
David, go back to your sheep. Jerusalem is not for you.
A boulder is rolled off the battlement, crashing down into the valley below, sending dust into the air. The soldiers laugh harder, convinced that their walls will never fall. The air is thick with anticipation, but also uncertainty. In the center of it all, David stands near a fire, his brow furrowed, deep in thought. His hand grips the hilt of his sword as he paces, his silhouette cast in stark contrast against the flames. His mind is racing.
Jerusalem must fall, but how?
A deep rumble of thunder rolls across the sky, punctuating the weight of the moment. The challenge has been set. David must find a way. But how will he conquer the city deemed impenetrable? Young Joab crouched in the shadows near the base of the city wall. His breathing is slow, steady. His fingers trace the cracks in the rock as he listens. Drip, drip. A faint trickle of water seeps through a small opening in the earth. Joab presses his ear against the stone, his expression shifting from curiosity to realization.
Water, underground, a way in.
Inside David's tent, a dimly lit space filled with maps and battle plans, Joab kneels before the king. He spreads out a crude map of Jerusalem, tracing his finger along a hidden pathway.
The Jebusites carved a shaft from the city down to the Gihon Spring, an underground tunnel to bring water inside their walls.
David leans in, his eyes narrowing. He studies the map, absorbing every detail.
And you're certain it leads inside the city?
It's their lifeline, but it's also their weakness.
A tense silence falls over the room. The flickering torchlight casts shifting shadows across their faces. The weight of the moment settles between them. David, after a pause, gripping the hilt of his sword, asked,
Can it be done?
Joab hesitates for only a second before meeting David's gaze, his voice firm.
If we move silently, swiftly, yes.
The entrance of the water shaft looms before Joab and his warriors, dark, narrow, and damp. The only sound is the rhythmic drip of water echoing through the tunnel. A single torch flares to life, its glow flickering across the determined faces of Joab's hand-picked warriors. Their breathing is slow, controlled, but their eyes betray the tension. Joab exhales sharply, placing his hand on the stone wall before looking back at his men.
Stay silent. Stay close. If they hear us, we're dead.
He grips the torch tighter and steps forward. One by one, his warriors follow, crawling into the narrow tunnel that will lead them inside Jerusalem. The tunnel is tight, forcing them to move single file, their bodies scraping against the cold, wet walls. The torchlight flickers as water drips from the ceiling, forming shallow pools beneath their feet. The further they descend, the heavier the air becomes. One wrong move, and the walls could collapse. Or worse, the Jebusites could hear. A sudden noise, a pebble clattering deeper into the shaft. The group freezes. Breathless silence follows. Joab raises a hand, signaling them to stop. He listens. Nothing. After a tense moment, he motions them forward again. The walls seem to close in around them, pressing on their courage. The echoes of dripping water mix with their steady, measured breaths. Joab's hand brushes against something carved into the rock, an ancient symbol, almost faded by time. His eyes widen in recognition.
Yahweh, make our path straight.
A deep rumble shakes the tunnel. Dust and tiny stones fall from above. The warriors stop, eyes darting upward. A moment of silence stretches unbearably long. The night is deathly still. A pale moon casts eerie shadows over Jerusalem's fortress. The Jebusites, unaware of the danger creeping beneath their feet, patrol the walls lazily. Torches flicker in their sconces, sending long, dancing shadows across the ancient stones. Joab and his warriors, faces slick with sweat and dirt, reach the end of the narrow shaft. The exit, a stone-covered opening leading into the city, is just ahead. Joab places a hand on the cold rock and slowly, carefully, pushes it aside. A burst of fresh air rushes in. They have made it inside. Joab motions to his men. One by one, they slip out, silent as phantoms, emerging into a darkened corridor. The only sound is the distant hum of the city beyond. A single Jebusite guard stands nearby, his back turned. Joab's eyes lock onto him. He moves, fast, precise. His dagger flashes, and the guard slumps without a sound. Joab catches his body before it hits the ground, lowering him gently. The city slept, unaware that its doom had already arrived. The warriors split into groups, navigating the alleys like shadows. Every step is calculated. Every movement is precise. The city's defenses are strong, but its warriors are overconfident, unsuspecting. As Joab moves toward the main gate, his pulse quickens. This is the moment everything hinges upon. The massive wooden gates, sealed shut, stand just ahead. A pair of Jebusite sentries lean against the post, speaking in hushed tones, oblivious to the coming storm. A warrior beside Joab silently knocks an arrow. Joab gives a slight nod. The arrow flies, a whisper in the wind, and strikes true. The first guard drops. The second barely has time to react before Joab's blade meets his throat. Quickly they move. Joab signals to his men outside the walls. With a heavy groan, the city gates creak open, and then a war horn sounds. The Israelites charge. Chaos explodes into the city. The once silent night is now filled with the clash of steel, the cries of warriors, the thunderous echo of charging feet. David himself leads the assault, his sword raised high.
For Yahweh, for Israel, Jerusalem is ours.
Swords clash, shields splinter. The Jebusites, caught off guard, scramble to defend themselves, but panic spreads among them. They never expected the Israelites to breach their walls, let alone from within their own city. A desperate Jebusite warrior lunges at Joab. He parries, pivots, and cuts him down in a single swift motion. Blood spatters the stone beneath his feet, but he doesn't stop. The city must fall. The Jebusites' last stand occurs at the citadel. A final group of defenders rallies, but David's forces overwhelm them. With one last cry, the remaining Jebusites fall. The city is conquered. The battle is over. David strides to the highest point of the city, his crimson-stained banner in hand. The golden light of dawn breaks over the horizon as he plants it firmly into the ground.
Today, Jerusalem becomes the city of David.
A roar of victory erupts from his warriors. The Israelites lift their weapons in triumph, their voices echoing through the newly conquered city. Joab stands near the entrance of the water shaft, his breath steady but his body weary. He gazes down into the darkness from where they had emerged. The passage that had once been the city's lifeline had become its downfall. David approaches, his steps purposeful yet quiet. He stops beside Joab, looking down at the tunnel with a thoughtful expression.
You risked everything.
Joab doesn't respond immediately. His eyes remain fixed on the shaft. After a moment, he exhales deeply and finally speaks.
The Jebusites' pride blinded them. They never thought we'd use their water as a weapon.
God's strategy defies human logic. The mighty are often defeated not by brute force, but by the unexpected. Even a simple water shaft can become a highway to victory when Yahweh is leading the way. This city, the city of David, would one day welcome the Messiah, the King of Kings. It was no accident that God led David here. It was part of a greater story, one that would change history forever. David's conquest of Jerusalem is recorded. What about you? What impossible wall are you facing? What stronghold seems unbreakable? Like David, seek God's unexpected path. His ways are higher than ours, and his victories often come through the places we least expect.
Death stood at his door, its cold fingers reaching to claim him. But Hezekiah, king of Judah, looked into the void and spoke with unwavering faith. Not today. A prophecy is spoken. Fate is sealed. A king once mighty, now brought to his knees before the inevitable. Death has come for Hezekiah, but the king is not ready to surrender. With a desperate cry, he prays a prayer that defies logic, that shakes the heavens. A midnight battle ensues, fought not with swords or shields, but by the hand of an angel. By morning, 185,000 enemy soldiers lay dead. A miracle unfolds, but what begins as divine favor soon leads to a dangerous downfall. Power blinds, pride corrupts. A single mistake seals the fate of a nation. One king, one answered prayer, one costly mistake. This is the story of Hezekiah, a king of great faith, remarkable victories, and a costly mistake. The days of King Ahaz were dark and full of corruption. The people of Judah had abandoned the ways of the Lord. Their king, Ahaz, desecrated the temple, worshipped foreign gods, and committed the ultimate evil. He sacrificed his own son in fire, offering him to Molech. Unlike David, his ancestor, he walked in wickedness, leading the nation into ruin. In response, the Lord's judgment came swiftly. The Arameans invaded, the Philistines raided. The northern kingdom of Israel struck down 120,000 men of Judah in a single day. Jerusalem trembled, yet Ahaz did not turn to God. Instead, he sought help from Assyria, stripping the temple of its gold and silver to bribe King Tiglath-Pileser III. But Assyria was not Judah's savior. The yoke of oppression tightened. Ahaz, drowning in his own wickedness, was struck down, and his son, Hezekiah, took the throne. Ahaz rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David, and Hezekiah his son succeeded him as king. 2 Kings 16:20. At just 25 years old, Hezekiah rose to power, but unlike his father, he did not continue in idolatry. His first act as king was not to build walls, forge alliances, or raise an army. It was to restore the temple and lead Judah back to God. For 16 days the priests labored, removing every trace of idolatry from the temple. At last, the doors of the sanctuary were opened once more. The sounds of harps and cymbals filled the courts. The people bowed low in worship. For the first time in years, the Lord's presence returned to Jerusalem. But Judah's revival would not go unnoticed. The nations watched. Assyria watched. Would Hezekiah's defiance against the gods of the nations bring war upon Judah? Far to the north, the most ruthless empire of the time, Assyria, was watching. Their king, Sennacherib, had swallowed nations whole, and now his eyes were set on Judah. In the 14th year of Hezekiah's reign, the Assyrian army marched south, destroying every fortified city of Judah. The people trembled. Jerusalem stood alone. Seeing the devastation, Hezekiah made a decision, one that would cost him dearly. King Hezekiah of Judah, fearing the Assyrian king's wrath, sends a message to the king at Lachish, acknowledging his wrongdoing and promising to pay whatever tribute is demanded, leading to the imposition of 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah stripped the temple, even removing the gold from its doors to meet the demand. But the peace was false. The Assyrian king had no intention of honoring the agreement. Instead, he sent his high-ranking officer, the Rabshakeh, to deliver a chilling message.
Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. He cannot save you. Do not let him make you trust in the Lord, saying, "The Lord will deliver us." Have any of the gods of the nations delivered their lands from the king of Assyria? 2 Kings 18:29-35.
The people stood frozen. The enemy mocked their God. Hezekiah had only one option left, to turn fully to the Lord. Hezekiah tore his clothes, covered himself in sackcloth, and went into the house of the Lord. He sent word to the prophet Isaiah, pleading,
It may be that the Lord your God will hear all the words of the field commander, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to ridicule the living God, and that he will rebuke him for the words the Lord your God has heard. Therefore pray for the remnant that still survives. 2 Kings 19:4.
Isaiah tells King Hezekiah's officials to tell the king, Do not be afraid of what you have heard, those words with which the underlings of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. I will make him return to his own land, and there I will have him cut down with the sword. Isaiah 37:6-7, NKJV. That very night, the angel of the Lord descended, and when the people awoke the next morning, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers lay dead. Sennacherib fled back to Nineveh in terror. Years later, as he worshipped in the temple of his god, his own sons assassinated him. But Hezekiah's trials were not over. A sickness came upon him, and the Lord sent Isaiah with a grim prophecy. Set your house in order, for you shall die and not live. 2 Kings 20:1. Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and wept bitterly.
O Lord, remember how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart.
Before Isaiah had even left the palace, the Lord spoke again. Turn again, and tell Hezekiah the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee. On the third day thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city for mine own sake, and for my servant David's sake. 2 Kings 25:6 KJV. As a sign, the shadow on the sundial moved backward 10 degrees. Time itself had shifted by the command of the Lord. News of Hezekiah's miraculous healing spread, reaching the distant land of Babylon. Their king sent envoys with gifts. Hezekiah welcomed the Babylonian envoys with open arms, eager to impress them. He led them through his palace, unveiling his entire wealth. He proudly displayed his entire armory, revealing everything that belonged to him. Nothing within his house or across his entire kingdom was hidden from their sight. 2 Kings 20:13. Soon after, the prophet Isaiah arrived. His voice carried urgency as he questioned,
Hezekiah, what did these men say? Where did they come from?
They came from a distant land,
Hezekiah responded, smiling.
from Babylon.
Isaiah's expression darkened. He closed his eyes briefly, listening to the voice of the Lord. Then he spoke.
Hear the word of the Lord. The days are coming when everything in your house, all the treasures your ancestors have stored up, will be carried away to Babylon. Nothing will be left, declares the Lord. 2 Kings 20:16-17.
A heavy silence filled the room as Hezekiah's heart sank. But Isaiah was not finished.
Some of your own descendants, your own flesh and blood, will be taken away as eunuchs to serve in the palace of the king of Babylon. 2 Kings 20:18.
Hezekiah bowed his head in solemn acceptance.
The word of the Lord is good.
He said,
At least there will be peace and security in my lifetime. 2 Kings 20:19.
Yet his mistake had set Judah on a path toward destruction. Babylon would return, and the kingdom Hezekiah had fought to preserve would one day fall. Despite this failure, Hezekiah remained devoted to God. He took the years granted to him and used them wisely. He fortified Jerusalem's walls, and the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? 2 Kings 20:20. As the years passed, the once vibrant warrior king grew old. His youthful fire had been replaced by the wisdom of experience. He had witnessed the power of prayer, felt the hand of God deliver his nation, and experienced divine mercy firsthand. Finally, the time came for Hezekiah to rest, and Hezekiah slept with his fathers, and they buried him in the chiefest of the sepulchres of the sons of David. And all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem did him honor at his death. And Manasseh his son reigned in his stead. 2 Chronicles 32:33. His legacy was one of faith, devotion, and trust in God, despite his flaws. It reminds us that God's mercy is available to those who seek him, but our choices have lasting consequences. How will you use the time that God has given you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remain blessed.